I now have the pleasure of welcoming to the stage the moderator of the Clarke Conversation on Imagination and the voice you've been hearing coming from behind the curtain, broadcaster Bill Scanlon. Let's give him a welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, and congratulations to all of our honorees tonight for some pretty spectacular work. Now we get to the fun part, the conversation. And that's what this is. It's a conversation between me and our three guests, but it's also with you as well, because I promise you we will be opening the floor for comments or questions. There will be plenty, I'm sure, that we don't address in our conversation, and really nothing's off limit. But I hope that we get some good questions from the audience. So here in the next 45 or 50 minutes, Pam and George will have the microphones and we'll come around. And what an opportunity really for us, folks, because the future is sitting with us with our honorees in terms of the future of literature, science fiction, certainly the future of communications and space technology, and an organization that's defined in a way the future of discovery. Those discoveries have found our future. So yes, it's a conversation about AI, about artificial intelligence, but we want to make that as broad as possible. And the topic, which you probably saw in your program tonight, is how do we navigate a positive future for Earth dwellers in an AI and advanced tech world? Man, that's a heavy subject right there. But we'll explore elements of that. But I wanted to start, and just so you know, I'm not sandbagging Dr. Okorafor here. She knows I'm going to ask this question. So I was looking through her social media the other day, and her cool-looking cats that she's got a lot of photos of, and other cool animals. So Nettie, I'm going to start with you because I saw a recent social media post of yours that had me both chuckling and nodding my head in agreement. You posted a photograph that I don't think you took this photograph.
No.
And it's the marquee on a very ordinary-looking old building. And the marquee says, "I bet aliens ride past Earth and lock their doors." And Dr. Okorafor's comment was, "Yep." So I wanted to ask you as we start, is that comment more about your view of sort of a current situation or a peek into how you view our future?
Yeah, it was it was a little bit of both. It was, of course, it's tongue-in-cheek, okay, but at the same time, it wasn't, because I felt when I posted that there are some things going on in our world right now, around the world, where it's clear that humanity is not showing its best face right now, and we're not treating ourselves very well. We're not treating each other very well. And so, like, when I saw that image, it made me definitely think, yeah, if I were an alien, and I'm flying past this Earth, I wouldn't want to come and say hi. I would just keep right on going because, as I said, humanity, we're not treating each other very well. Yeah. So how are we going to treat aliens if they were to come?
That may be a good starting off point on just pessimistic, optimistic on the future of planet Earth. Michael, if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about humanity, the same thing that humans are doing to the climate and everything that we're doing to our planet. We're out of balance right now when it comes to our resources. We're using 3 times more resources today than we're able to replenish in 1 year, and that's not sustainable. So I get the tongue-in-cheek comment about don't stop here, but we need to look for solutions and find solutions. And I know we're going to talk about AI later, but that's just another tool in the exploration toolkit to use to find those solutions.
And Romain?
Yeah, I think it's the same line. We should really think about the common sense approach based on core values, which we are about to lose. Simply to mention a few, and it's quite dramatic, I think, to say this clearly, democracy. Mm-hmm. It's not really something which today has a favor in our world. So when aliens look at this, maybe they have to search for a while before they see democratic values. Individual freedoms, maybe that's still okay, but respect of human rights, I think, is another huge problem. Not to speak about what's going on in different parts of the world. We are really, I think you are not even speaking about human rights, but you are simply speaking about respect of human lives. And it's quite dramatic. Probably when you look at the Earth from the outside, you might really pass by.
Well, can we do both things? Can we both embrace new technology, advanced technology like artificial intelligence and the latest technology like that, and fix planet Earth, things that aren't right on planet Earth?
Yes, I strongly think so. I think that the solutions will come from the same place. You know, it comes from a goodness. Even so, the solution for how to use the new technology, and the solution for how we treat each other, and the solution for how we treat the planet, those all come from the same place: a goodness, a respect, just an acknowledgement of those things around you, and understanding the value of life and outside of yourself. I think it all comes from the same place. So yeah, I think those solutions are all definitely possible.
Before I even told Walda I'd like to host this, when she asked, I've been thinking in the months ahead about the whole concept of AI, artificial intelligence, and wondering myself if the I part of that, the intelligence part, we overlook the human inquisitiveness, we overlook inspiration, we overlook innovation in technology. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. That comes later, unfortunately, right? It always starts with what's the solution and how do we get there? Because the intelligence isn't about emotion, as you say. So when AI is used to develop certain products or certain solutions, or even if you chat with it, it doesn't have that emotional connection. It starts with an answer that it believes is right from its learning, void of a human emotion. And it'll catch up, but that's I think where we're at right now.
Ramon?
Yeah, maybe coming from the industry, I think we should nonetheless really underline the positive impact all of this will have on productivity, on economic growth, on opportunities. So definitely a lot of positives on the economic side. The negatives or the challenges are more, if you want, on the human side, on the political side. And yes, hopefully there will be a balance, but I'm not so sure. You know, one of the problems I think of our time, maybe it was always so in the past, is that long-term problems today need solutions that are not very popular with people and with voters. So if you think about climate change mitigation, or thinking about my public finance hat, if you think about in Europe about aging of the population and financing of pension schemes, all of these are problems that are not really tackled by the political environment. And so it's about a little bit the same about artificial intelligence. Hopefully, timely, there will be the challenges, the regulation will be put in place, and we will not wait too long before we put a framework to this development of artificial intelligence, in particular when we make the step to general artificial intelligence.
How do you think because I know your company had been involved with the spreading of global satellites and expanding broadband into areas of the world, very, very remote areas of the world. And we talk here in this country about digital deserts, and it's not just this country, but other parts of the world. You've had some success with that. How important is that in the larger scheme of spreading technology, whether it be artificial intelligence or other technology?
Yeah, I think it's key. If you want to educate people, if you want really to have the knowledge being spread, you need to have a mean of access of communication to all the people, and not to have deserts, be it in countries like the US or be it on different continents. So what we really, I think, the pleasant thing of what I've done is that we brought connectivity, for example, with OCB to islands in the Pacific who had no broadband connectivity at all. And suddenly, with a beam being put over a small island, and then with terrestrial network being linked, there was broadband available to the people on the island. Same thing in countries in Africa where we are present. So I think all of this is very important, and clearly artificial intelligence will further help developing satellite solutions to be put in place.
I hope I'm not reading too much into your comments that you made a few minutes ago when you talked about looking for the kinds of things that looked in the future of Africa and elsewhere, and you didn't find it, so you started to write it. So getting back to, you saw the possibility, you created your own possibility in that. Do you think the rest of the world needs to have a little bit of that confidence, that leap of faith to get to that next step?
Oh, certainly. I think that's actually really important. That's that idea of participating in the global think tank, in the global dreaming, the looking at possibilities. Because even now, a lot of our technologies continue to be created and driven by very specific parts of the world, very specific communities. And one of the things that I'm always thinking about is, there are a whole bunch of things that are swirling in my mind because I'm still thinking about other questions, like the other part of that we've been talking about. But one of the things that I'm always talking about is that that need to create. When technologies are created, those who create the technologies are creating technologies for themselves, for their world, their communities, the things that they know what they need, and so therefore they're creating these technologies to address what they need. And then other parts of the world that didn't create anything are taking those things and then figuring out how to use them for themselves. But I think that this idea of if we have more people from around the world, different cultures creating technologies, I feel like we'll have more. I feel like we'll have many different types of things because people will be kind of creating and imagining technologies from their own point of view, and we'll get different things because of that, because around the world people need different things. They have different ideas of what's important. And so I've always felt that if we only have a small part of the world that is creating these technologies, we're not using all of humanity.
And as we talked about before the conversation, guys, if you want to jump into what each other says, feel free to
I would love to comment on that because National Geographic had such a long
Yes.
history of exploration, but that exploration was done by primarily North Americans that were traveling into other countries to do that exploration and bring it back to diffuse knowledge. Now, as you heard one of our trustees say that over 50% of our grants now are to women, and 60% of them are in country now. So we're getting those solutions and those innovators right in their own country who have a really vested interest in protecting their own land, and quite frankly, probably do it a lot better. And if we can help provide those tools through technology, it's all even better.
Your organization is all about frontiers and discovering frontiers. Why is it that AI has that sort of feeling of a frontier that is both waiting to be found and feared?
Great question. I think the answer to the first part of the question, that frontier, again, as I said, it's another tool that our explorers can use when they do their research, they do their exploration. They learn faster of what solutions could be out there, and they go through these cycles. They can collaborate through AI with other explorers. The fear is, I think, several, but one is moving too fast, getting to a solution that isn't quite proven just because AI says it's right. Maybe it isn't right yet for the planet or for the people to adapt. So I think that's some caution that needs to be taken, or how that information is disseminated. Because if people know, if they've seen the fake news, you can see the fake photos. National Geographic is known for very fact-based and does its research and before it publishes anything. And now anybody can take one of those photos out of our archive because it's open to the public and modify it. And we need to have tools there that says, wait a minute, that's not really how it was.
Your organization, you're being honored tonight, certainly in Washington, one of the longtime awards going back more than 100 years is the annual Hubbard Award that is given for distinction in exploration scientific discovery. I think the first awardee was Robert Perry in 1906 or something.
That's correct.
President Teddy Roosevelt.
Presidents used to give the award.
Awarded. So when you look at it, and then people like Jane Goodall, John Glenn, the senator, and astronauts have received this distinguished award. When you look at it, where do you see AI in the use of AI in the world of science and discovery?
Wow. It will be, again, one of those tools that they'll be able to just learn faster and learn about the exploration that they're on and the journey that they're on in that tool. I mean, as I said earlier, I mentioned the article in 1969 about the astronauts that went into space. They were Hubbard Medal winners. They were innovators at that time. You mentioned others, that Jane Goodall. They used technology back then, and that technology will continue to change and adapt, and AI is going to be part of that. And we have explorers today that are doing incredible things, from using artificial intelligence to help protected areas from poachers. And so those cameras now can track whether it's an animal walking by or a potential poacher, and be able to notify the protected wardens there to be able to go out there so they can manage a much larger population of protected land than they could without it.
Rama, I wanted to find out from you, you've long been in the space and satellite and telecommunications business. How is your business currently using artificial intelligence?
Yeah, maybe one pre-comment. I left the CEO position 9 years ago. So I'm probably not really up to date. And second comment, I'm not an engineer. So definitely this is an area where I'm not the most prominent guy to speak about.
But they can recreate you, though.
Yeah, and probably there are people in the room who know it better. No, but when you think about satellites, what's obvious is that you cannot replace hardware, because once you have launched the satellite, it's gone. So it's all about software and about programs. So artificial intelligence will help tremendously, obviously, in order to update all of these programs that you need, for example, for managing the energy on the satellite, as you have really the solar power, which is really allowing the satellite to operate and to establish communication. For the network management, for the traffic forecasting, all of this will obviously tremendously being helped by artificial intelligence. So really, the optimization of operations are clearly being improved. And also, maybe on another area I shortly mentioned about challenges of debris management. So with the congestion in space, artificial intelligence will definitely help a lot in order to avoid collision, in order really to track debris, in order to remove debris. So for the satellite industry, artificial intelligence will definitely allow a lot of things to happen. The limitations will simply be that you need to have enough data, and you need to have enough bandwidth in order to communicate permanently with the satellite, in order to use these data. But I'm quite optimistic that there will be a technology jump regarding satellite technology.
I confess that I've not read your books, Nettie, but I want to know how much you're dealing with these sorts of issues in your writing.
I'm working on something new, so that's why I paused. But I have written a short story that was about, I'm remembering it right now, it was called Sunrise, and it was about an AI, or a personal assistant, because I used to be really obsessed with the concept of intelligent personal assistants that would be on your phone, just helping and chatting with you and just causing trouble and all that kind of stuff. So I wrote this short story where it was, a personal assistant was downloaded onto your phone when you got onto this flight. It was a Dreamliner airplane, and that was like a complimentary thing that a personal assistant was downloaded onto your phone. And this girl's phone, the personal assistant got a little personal. We'll just put it that way. It got a little personal. So that was one story where, and I've always been interested in artificial intelligence, but real artificial intelligence, not aggregating programs, like and sentience. That's what I've always really been interested in as a science fiction writer, because I think that's where all of the issues that we as human beings have, that's when it's going to really come into play, and it's going to get really fun when that happens. But
You talked a little bit in your comments about African futurism. What was the genesis of you thinking of that concept? And
I mean, I felt like it was in, I coined the term in 2018, but it was something that I had been thinking about for a while. It was the way that my own work was being viewed and not understood. And it was because I realized it was because a lot of people didn't have the terminology to understand what it was that I was doing. They were viewing everything that I was writing through a very American or Western point of view, and I come at things from a very global point of view, and I needed to get out of that. I needed that framework to just shake off. I needed to shake that off greatly, and I know a lot of other writers needed it as well. And it wasn't so much about the label, it was more about the conversation. I needed there to be a conversation about, especially when it came to Black speculative fiction writers, that we are not a monolith. We are not culturally a monolith. We come from many different cultures, and that's a good thing. And there needed to be that conversation about it. So that was really the genesis of it.
I wanted to ask you too, and gentlemen, you can respond to the question I'm going to get to on this. Some of you may have seen a recent New York Times story. The headline of that story was, "The World is Becoming More African." And the extensive piece covered areas of culture, technology, politics, but it's centered on this demographic certainty. Quote, "By 2050, 1 in 4 people on the planet will be African." A seismic change that's already started to register. But in reading into that article, and reading about technology in particular, the New York Times wrote this, that, quote, "But on technology," the story points out, "not long ago, technology was the big idea for enabling Africa to leapfrog its way out of poverty. Startups sprouted in countries like Nigeria, South Africa, and Morocco. Innovative technologies like M-Pesa brought mobile banking to tens of millions of people. Women-only coding schools emerged. Microsoft and Google established major centers in Kenya, the self-styled Silicon Savannah of East Africa." And they said, but while technology brought billions in investment, it failed dismally on one crucial front: creating jobs. How do we ensure that AI, how concerned I should say, are you that AI is not just another technology that may pass not only Africa, but other disproportionately poor areas of the world by?
First, I'm thinking about why, when they say that it didn't create jobs. I don't really know the foundation of that, so I'm wondering about that. I'm gonna think about that one. That's a heavy one when it comes to AI and because there are all sorts of issues with artificial intelligence and where that's going. I'm not really sure even how to answer that, because I think it's more complex than is AI going to provide, like, is there going to be an issue with jobs? And then there's a question of poverty in Africa. There's a lot of wealth in Africa. It's just, it's very complex. Like, all of that it's all very complicated. Like, I don't even know how I would answer that, because there's so many layers and elements that I'd have to look at to even analyze how to boil it down to something simple.
I guess on a broader question is on technology jobs, period. Here in the U.S. and elsewhere, are those jobs just going to the elite few who are educated in elite places, or is there a fairness to the spread of jobs around the world?
Yeah, I can only speculate on that. I think the comment from Africa's standpoint, is they use the word leapfrog. It leapfrogs such a huge gap in technology. And you think about, I live on a farm, so I'll use one of the very first innovations was the plow, right? You had many people working in the field, and then suddenly the plow comes and one farmer can do what 20 can do in one day. But then they moved out and they did other jobs, right? They were bakers, they were other jobs that came up over the years, and then population, but it was a gradual growth. And when you leapfrog something so big as this technology in a country that is still developing and has the poverty and wants to really support itself, I think that was the big challenge there. And then I think there was the elite that just got more elite. I think that just separated that gap. And I think to a certain extent that's happening here as well in the United States with this technology. And therefore, I think there's the need to regulate, which this guy knows a little bit about.
No, coming back to something you said much earlier, Nidhi, it's really that you said that parts of Africa would be left aside. What I see in the world and in the future is really that there will be multiple regions in the world where technology will develop. And so I see a more equal spread of this worldwide, including Africa. Obviously, there will be huge problems resulting from climate change, and that's another story. But if you look really at this spread of technology, I'm much positive that this will really also reach other regions in the world, and in particular, as you said, really build with the demographic expansion of Africa, there will be a lot of dynamics on that continent.
We could have covered this earlier, but I wanted to go around the three of you and hear on a little different tangent. Who or what inspires you daily in terms of your life and career? What are some of those? Who are some of those people?
Wow, we have 6,000 active explorers, and it's like you love them all the same. But there are just some that are just so iconic to me. Bob Ballard comes to mind. Bob Ballard was he discovered the Titanic wreck, and he did that under a very interesting disguise of a National Geographic expedition when he was actually working for the Navy to find two subs that were lost during the Cold War. And that's somebody who used unbelievable innovation, but he did it with a crew also of women, and women scientists were on board with them, which was in 1983, I think it was unimaginable. So, he had that kind of vision of technology, but also a diversity that made his expedition so successful.
Nettie, where do you find your inspiration? Who is that?
I don't know. I think I find a lot of inspiration from scientists, and especially the really specific stuff that I just stumble across. It's not that I'm doing any particular research, but I'll just stumble across something where I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Like there was one, I can't remember the details right now, but there was one scientist who was working on just that connection between the brain and technology, where they were able to make someone walk again. It was a New York Times article. There was a vegetable heart that was created. It was like in a box. It was a 3D printed vegetable heart. And stuff like that. I find as a writer, but also just as a person, I find that very inspiring. Also watching activists do what activists do, and watching people just get out and address a lot of really powerful, immediate, timely social situations, watching them find the bravery and the courage to do what they do. I find that really inspiring as well. There's a lot to be inspired.
On the scientist end, correct me if I'm wrong, you briefly had an interest in getting into entomology,
yes.
correct?
Yes, I did.
And some of that's reflected in the posts that you have on your
Always.
on your social media.
Once you have that kind of thing, because I wanted to be an entomologist from the time I was like 6 years old. I love bugs. I've always loved bugs. I wanted to study them like very closely in particular.
Not the computer kind, the bug
Not
kind.
not the computer. Even though there are bugs that live in computers, those are pretty cool. I'd like to study those. But I've always wanted to do that, and becoming a writer definitely it didn't stamp that out. It's definitely something I still do. You can see it.
Romain, where do you find your inspiration?
Yeah, a lot of inspiration from different angles. Maybe here I want to limit myself to the satellite business and to look at people who might inspire me in the satellite business. And then clearly there are people like Elon Musk that come to your mind, because he is really leapfrogging the words that was used here, satellite technology, be it for the launchers, be it for the satellite constellations. And yeah, it's inspiring, but it's also frightening, because you really ask yourself, where's the limit and what's the final goal of all of this? For example, when speaking before to the guys from Ariane's bus on the launch vehicles, when I think back in our times, we used diverse launchers from Europe, Ariane from the US, from Russia, Proton. And nowadays, more than 80-90% of all the launches in the world are done by one firm, by Elon Musk. So up to date, from 2023 to date, he has already 8 these launches, meaning he's launching rockets every third or every fourth day. So just such crazy things. So that's clearly inspirational, but as I said, it's also a little bit...
On the inspiration, and on the other end of that, how often do each of you, or how often does somebody write you and say, oh my gosh, I read this, or I saw Black Panther, well, you did the Black Panther comic book, or I read this, or I'm going to watch that thing on Hulu, or I saw what you did with SES, and I want to get into the satellite world, or I got National Geographic for years, and it inspired me. How often do you hear those stories from people?
Oh, with National Geographic, always. And we always get in my grandmother's cabin or my grandmother's house,
Yes.
and I always go, we don't take those back. Those magazines are permanent. They're not returnable. But we do something when employees start at National Geographic. We say, what's your story? And it's true. It's like, where did you come from? What's your background? But what inspired you to come work for National Geographic? And just hearing that from employees, they're coming to work for a mission, that they've had a connection before they even came there. And I tell people, when you go to an organization like National Geographic that has this mission for 135 years, after a while, you start to protect the mission. You become the mission, and you come in every day to serve it. And so that's what inspires me to come every day, is the employees too.
That must be one of the most affirming things as a writer, is hearing back from the people who read your work.
Yeah, it's actually overwhelming when that happens. It's because when you're writing something, you're quiet, you're in your own enclosed place, just typing, and you're not really thinking about that. And then you put it out in the world, and then suddenly you're getting all of this response to it, and it's overwhelming, and it feels good. It does feel good.
Good.
It does feel good, but it's also unexpected though.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have more of it when your series gets on Hulu, right?
I'm not thinking about that.
All right, so this is obviously Washington, so we do need to get into government regulation of AI. It wouldn't be a complete topic. So I think it was last Monday, building on last year's AI Bill of Rights, the White House issued a comprehensive executive order on technology. They've been focusing on it much more intensely this year with some of the issues with Chat GPT, et cetera. Each of you, what do you think the role of government should be, here in the US in particular, in regulating AI?
I would say the first hope, but I believe it will not happen, is really that regulation will be done worldwide. And
Worldwide?
Yeah, and that there will be an international regulation in place. But I'm afraid this might not really be what's happening. And you have such diverse approaches that you mentioned, the White House. You also have the initiative from the UK, which is on the other side of really being relatively unregulated, or asking for an unregulated environment. You have in the middle of this, if you want, Europe or the European Union, where the European Parliament has developed a concept which will still have to be discussed at ministerial level, with a very rigid regulation to be put in place. And then maybe on the other extreme, you have China, where clearly there is a regulation in place, and so my wish would simply be that this will go beyond national regulations, and there will be a broader approach to all of this.
But it gets back to one of those problems, and I'll hear from both of you, but it gets back to one of those issues that the world can't come together on. So far, anyway. It's early in the game, perhaps.
Yeah.
Michael, what are your...
Yeah, it'll definitely be a challenge to go global, and I agree. I wish that does happen. I think on one of the roles of regulation that I'd like to touch on is really the education. I think people have different levels of what is artificial intelligence. I'm not an expert, and I don't know if any of us are, but there's misinformation out there of what it is, and people are afraid of it, and some people are embracing it, and you just hear how it's being used in different ways. So I think part of the government's role is to really help educate. What is it really, and what should we know about it, and not be afraid of it. And I think that's where there's a lot of divide in people. They're just afraid of what it's going to do to them and their job, but they don't really understand it yet. So I think that's one of the roles from the regulation that has to happen.
Nettie?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, as you just said, I'm not an expert on, on artificial intelligence, but one of the questions that rolls around in my head is when we're talking about regulation, I start thinking, well, who has access to the unregulated stuff? Who's going to have access to that? And the existence of it, the fact that someone has access to it puts whoever has access to it in a powerful position. And then we're just back at that place that we always end up, where there's something that's super powerful that some people have access to and others don't. So I'm all for regulating, but I still have that question of access and who has access, and what does that mean for the rest of society?
I've been wondering, even before this too, we have a number of young folks here tonight, and younger folks watching our live stream tonight may look at an oldster like me and start rolling their eyes and clicking their tongue when raising concerns over new technology, whereas these kids and your generation are so much more at ease with new technologies. Are we overthinking a little bit or over-worrying the potential downside of AI? That's to the floor.
Oh, I thought that was
Jump in.
that was rhetorical. I have kids. They're older. There used to be ones that program the remote for me or load this thing. So I know where you're coming from. I don't think so. I think this is it's a huge change in the way that we are operating now, and because it doesn't just affect the young people, it affects all age groups, and there's good and there's also some very evil things that can be done by the 1 or 2% or less than that, but they could be very impactful. So
it does feel like we go through a freak out phase on new technology, right?
We do.
But to be fair, also we haven't figured out even the privacy issues on with social media. So.
And also, there's the question of, what is AI taught on? Like, what is it learning from?
Right.
And the issue of copyright. And as a creative, this is an issue for me. I think that that most writers will agree that having their work be used to teach AI is, without our permission, is highly problematic. It's copyrighted material. Those regulations need to be put in place. They don't need to be discussed or kind of put on the side, because I've been on panels where we've talked about this, and I've talked about this with AI people, we'll just put it that way, and that was very minimalized, and as a creative, that's not a minimal thing to have my work fed through something so so it learns me. That's very problematic, and I'm not even being paid at all, which I wouldn't even accept payment for that, because so I think that needs to be taken very, very seriously.
But is that another one too, that we've been very loose sometimes on copyright, that
Yes.
social media in particular allows the creation of memes, et cetera, where creators like yourself and many millions of others are not compensated for that work?
I mean, I think there's well, you guys,
Oh, you.
this is just a thing for me. I think there's and we're talking, okay, a meme that takes a picture that's been passed around versus like a whole movie, for example, or a whole novel. I think those are two different things.
Yeah.
You know, I think those things need to be taken very seriously. And a lot of the books that AI are learning on are pirated books. So it's like, yeah, that problem of piracy has been something that we've all known about, and we all kind of, me as a writer, I have to accept it and deal with it. But that's been a problem, and I think AI is going to multiply that problem. Like a lot of the problems that we're talking about are problems that have existed before AI was an issue.
Do we think that are we getting ourselves in a situation where the cow is out of the barn? You know, that we may have to do corrective regulation for things such as Nettie's pointing out obviously, the downsides, the real downside of AI.
Yeah. Well, that corrective is already happening. I mean, it's happening through other technologies that are doing that. You know, that's National Geographic signed on with Adobe's, which has a software that will validate whether a image has been altered, because it'll keep its history of record. So they always use the example of, here's a picture of the pyramids in Egypt, you know, on a beautiful day, and then the next picture is that same photograph but with dark clouds above it. The third picture is snow on the ground. Of course, you know, that could never happen, but it looks real. But through the Adobe software, which they're offering it open source to any editing software, will tell you each one of those change of images, so how it was changed. And they'll do a little icon to say that this has gone through kind of a validation process. So they're not trying to say if there's a picture out there that if it doesn't have that icon, it's not real or not. But if it does have it on there, then you can actually see that change. So I think that's what's happening now. Software is coming up to try to put the cow. I love the metaphor about a barn and a farm, but yeah, kind of put the cows and the horses back in the barn somewhat through protection.
I want to ask the three of you too. During Walda's comments about the HAL 9000 challenge, I noted that she raised a couple of questions. How do we ensure that AI, in this pivotal point of its development, does not harm us, that it does not replace humans, dampen our creativity, or undermine economic and humanistic systems that are central to who we are? Big question, but Ramon, you want to respond to some of that?
No, for me, the big question is really the geopolitical environment in which, or during which time the artificial intelligence is being developed. So I think the problem, personally, I look at artificial intelligence not as a problem in itself, but it's really the environment and the time it's developed. So probably it's one of the worst time where it can happen now. And I'm really worried about the use or the misuse of artificial intelligence for political reasons. And this can, then we are not speaking about copyrights or things like that, but we are really speaking about what's true and what's false. And then humanity might be in a very difficult situation because there will be so many truths around and so many people will live according to their truths, and that's where I'm worried about. So, and that's obviously a huge risk currently.
It feels like the fear of loss of humanity.
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought we were trying to make this positive.
I know, it just is what it is, you know.
It is. But I think looking at where AI has been used and machine learning for good has to be emphasized. I mean, just read the COVID vaccine, right? That was, we came to that vaccine through machine learning and much faster than we would have if we didn't have it. So, you know, looking at the positives and how it can be used to really further things of protection and nature. But
right, and I think you and I were talking earlier, Dr. Lena Wen, who had a piece in the Washington Post, who writes regularly there, wrote about, I think today even, about the success that Kaiser Permanente had in using AI for predictive reasons with patients in hospitals. Okay, so then how do we ensure, for for companies that are using AI, how do we ensure there's transparency so that I know when I'm in transaction with a business or an organization, that I know that there's artificial intelligence being used, that whether the data being gathered or creative uses are happening. How is there transparency with people using AI in those situations?
Well, I think it's got to come with disclosure, and that may have to go through regulation, but disclosing how the information is collected and used, and that's going to come through regulatory, I think, for the most part.
Where else do you see AI? You pointed out the vaccine. Where else do any of you on the positive side see AI being a potential game changer in our lives for the positive?
Climate change mitigation. So I think artificial intelligence can help a lot in order to allow a much better mitigation of the climate change. So definitely, obviously, everything in medicine. So I see a lot, and in the business, I see a lot of positives, even if what I said before sounds obviously very negative about this geopolitical dimension. But yeah, I think both sides of the coin do exist.
I mean, I think that it's basically AI can be used to do, the positives come in those places where AI can be used to do those things that human beings can't. That's where the positives will come from. If we start trying to immediately use it for those things that human beings can already do and want to do, I don't really see the purpose in that. But I think doing those things that we can't, climate change, medical issues, I mean, those are where it's going to really shine.
I want to remind our audience, too, we're going to open it up for questions here in just a little bit. So if you've been waiting to ask one of our guests, our honorees tonight, a question, we'll get to that momentarily, and George and Pam will have our mobile mics. It's sort of every new good technology has a trade-off, right? The EV industry is growing. EVs are great because they replace fossil fuels, but also the production of batteries causes great harm in the mining and the processing of those rare earth minerals. Using our phones and information is great, and access to information, but it's also a trade-off on personal privacy and things like that, and the time band that it can be. What are the trade-offs that potentially we're facing with AI? You've talked about some of the creative, but where else should we be concerned about trade-offs and using AI to improve our lives?
Wow. I think one of the trade-offs we've been talking about too is that personal interaction and that emotional connection. That could be a huge trade-off that we may be making as we try to move faster in these areas. But I do want to comment on your EV cars too, because it with those batteries, and it is digging up the planet at some point. It's getting more efficient, but you also have to understand when you plug your car into an outlet, where is that energy coming from? It's coming from fossil fuel. You really haven't done anything. So research is very important in doing that. And I think that's AI is also going to the research is going to be very critical as we develop solutions.
Maybe we don't pay attention to the downstream consequences of technology from the outset.
That's true.
Roman, you have a comment? Nettie?
No, I was just thinking about AI making things faster, and sometimes faster isn't necessarily the best way to get to where you need to go. That's all.
Well, in terms of AI, in terms of the potential downsides again, how concerned are you as it grows and its efficiency, as AI grows in its use, and we see it in more places that AI itself is able to dictate how we use it and how we regulate it. That artificial intelligence itself gets so smart that it's able to sort of set the ground rules for how it will operate. It sounds like more of a science fiction.
Yeah, it really does. I think that.
It's going to toss it to you, but it could be a heavy book.
Yeah, it definitely. Oh, it's never been written about. Never. What was the question again? Go ahead.
So how concerned about AI getting
Okay.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that concerned. I mean, but as I've said many times tonight, I'm an irrational optimist. So I'm not like I just feel like we'll get there. I feel like we'll get to where we need to go. So I'm not. There are definitely things to be concerned about, but I'm hoping that we figure it out. I think that we can figure it out. I think that the issues are a matter of things that we can do, and I do think that humanity as a whole does need to do better. But I think once it does better, then AI can be a wonderful tool to make us really, really great, greater than ever, I think.
I would agree with that. And I think the optimism is going to come from the younger generation, too, who is growing up with it and understands the delicacy of it.
In boning up on my Arthur C. Clarke before I came here tonight, I was rereading a number of things, and it came across this quote that said, Arthur C. Clarke, I think, said this about 20 years, 30 years ago, that our life, quote, our lifetime may be the last that will be lived out in a technological society. That seems so counterintuitive now because it is more and more than ever a technological society. What do you think he was getting at there?
It's not positive.
Michael?
That could be scary. I
Yeah.
mean, is he thinking that, technology is taking over mankind? I don't know. It can be interpreted a lot of different ways. Or, have we left this planet and gone somewhere else? I know that was something that he's contemplated in that article in 2001.
We've talked about a number of issues, future issues on climate change, a lot about AI. I've talked a bit about the population and demographic changes happening in the world. You called yourself an irrational optimist.
Yes.
Gentlemen, how would you describe your sort of view of the future? Optimistic or pessimistic, rational or irrational? Or any way you want to describe it.
No, I think at this stage, I share your view, but there will be other steps. And as I said before, when you go to general artificial intelligence, then the risks are much higher for humanity. But we are not there yet. So let's really hope that regulation and everything will be put in place, and that it will be in place before artificial intelligence reaches the next level. So we should be conscious about the risk, but there is no reason, I think, to be now, in French, défaitiste at this moment in time.
I'm a total optimist. Coming to work every day and listening to our explorers and the solutions that they're driving towards, the youth that we're funding, the Slingshot Challenge that I mentioned, which had over 5,000 entries last year. And these are just 1-minute video clips of people, youth, 13 to 18, all around the world, talking about what they are doing to innovate to solve climate solutions, or come up with climate solutions in their own communities. So, total optimist.
I know you can speculate in your fiction, but do all three of you think the human future is Earth-based?
Good question.
I'm looking at my trustee
Looking
here.
well down the road. You're talking about new frontiers.
Personally, I do. I think that living on another planet is, I don't know if it's possible, but it's talked about. And I think exploring other planets, because we'll learn a lot about our own planet by exploring other planets. So I think that may drive solutions. But this is a personal decision, a personal answer. I don't see that.
And on exploration, do you think we're back on the right path in terms of exploring other planets? Both the U.S. space effort,
I absolutely do. I feel
Yeah.
like we should have never stopped.
Yeah.
I think that's because we will continue to learn and learn. The telescope now that's out there and probing more, and the landing on Mars and the collection of data. So I think we're just going to continue to learn more about our universe and our own world.
Earth-based or not?
No, I just maybe want to comment on what you said, Mike, your optimism about the many young individuals and so. And I think for me, there is a clear difference between the optimism about what the people will do about it individually, also in science, in research, and on the other hand, the institutional risk that's coming with artificial intelligence. So on the one side, there are a lot of positive aspects and of hope, and the risks are really, if you want, at another level.
Agreed.
Well, I want to make sure we're still on time. So if you three are willing, we've got a few.
Happy to.
We've got our mobile mics, Pam and George. We have some questions from the audience. George or Pam will come with the mic. And just tell us who you are and if you would ask your question.
Hi, my name is Siobhan Greenfield. I'm a sophomore at Basis DC. So one topic I felt that you kind of scratched the surface on, but then didn't really go into, and I would like to hear more about what you think about it, is like morals in AI, right? Because personally, I think like one of the best ways to regulate AI would be somehow like incorporate like human morals into it, and I feel like that's obviously a big topic, and AI is also very broad. But like in my own computer class last year, we went into how AI can be very biased. For example, like facial recognition not being able to recognize people of color, or like a Twitter chatbot that had to be taken down in I think 24 hours because of how horrible it was, right? How do we like tackle that? How do we make sure that like going into like AI in the future, it's morally correct? Because you talked about like AI does not yet have like a human aspect when speaking with it. How would you begin to work on that? Like what would your ideas be?
I'm so glad you asked that. We haven't
Yeah.
touched really on that or ethics.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. I think your question is great. I think ethics is a huge concern out there because, as we were talking earlier, AI is learning from what it can access right now, and if it's accessing things that are considered immoral or unethical, that's what's going to learn first, right? And it's going to improve over time. I'd love to hear your answer for it, but I think it's just going to take some regulation and more scrutiny, and I think there's going to have to be programs that are sitting over top of these whether it's social media or everything, that's a filter that can help identify and screen that out before it actually becomes into the millions of access in social.
Do you want to weigh in?
I think that a lot of those biases are due to those who are involved in creating the AI, the various individuals involved, and our technology reflects us. It comes from us. So I think that I don't know. I mean, it's a broad solution. I don't know, but I think that if there was a greater diversity of people involved who were creating the AI and programming the AI and teaching the AI and coding it, if we had more of a diversity, because I'm pretty sure if you looked at the individuals who created the AI that we have that did all of those things, you would probably see a trend in those creators, and creators, I mean scientists, engineers, et cetera. So I think that it kind of comes back to what I was saying, that we need all of humanity involved in creating these things to filter out those issues, because those issues are going to come because they come from us. It's like it's not that the software is malfunctioning. It is not malfunctioning. It is functioning exactly how it was built. And that's where we need to look for the solution on how it was built. But I mean, it's a broad issue that I'm not surprised about at all.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned like comes from us. I remember reading an article from the MIT Technology Review about how a group of like big AI innovators, specifically like Elon Musk, we heard his name a lot tonight, made like a resolution to not work on AI advancements for 6 months, right? Like trying to put this regulation on it. And then they all went behind each other's backs. I mean, I think maybe less than a month later, Elon Musk was working on making another chatbot on Twitter. So, not to mention that again, but yeah. So it comes back to how do we regulate ourselves?
Do we have another question? Where's?
Yep.
Oh, here. Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Is on? Okay, so first, before I start with the question, I'm an optimist. So after you hear the question, you're not going to think that, but I am an optimist. Right now, we're about where we were when the ITU was established in 1850 or so to regulate the telegraph. And they thought, well, how's this all going to play out? We look at today, it's not even comparable in any dimension to what they saw 150 years ago. If you look at what we call AI today, it may be artificial, it's not very intelligent yet. Right. If you compare us to a machine, you're somewhere between 100 million and probably 100 trillion times more capable in terms of speed and density. So you now have a device, if we got the software right, our software of how our brain works, you got that right, then you could go to sleep and you could wake up in the morning and that AI instance would have created something 150, 200 years from today. So we sort of have regulation, we have control, we have ethics that are really based on the fact that things operate in a pace that we can deal with them. What if that pace were so fast that by the time we clicked and read what was on the screen, it had changed by 100 years? How do we want to prepare for that?
Don't know if there's a short answer to that. If everyone take a quick stab, we can get.
I don't think there is a
Yeah.
short answer,
Yeah.
but I think we are at the beginning.
Yeah.
It won't happen in a year or 10 or 20. I don't know when it'll happen, but the futurists that have come and spoken with us over the past, one of these days, right? So we're at the point where we can make it what we want to make it.
Let me leave that as a bit of a rhetorical question. I have one down front here and then one man in the middle, and I think, yes, young man here. If you would stand up, tell us your name and.
My name is William. I'm a sophomore at Basis also. So it seemed to me like one of the only ways that people have regulated AI is with other AI. For example, on certain AP exams like AP Computer Science, people taking it have to write a code before the exam at home and then submit it to College Board. And College Board has been using an AI to detect whether those kids have been using AIs to cheat on that. I know multiple people last year that got falsely flagged for using AI because the AI the College Board uses isn't very good or accurate. What's the solution to that kind of stuff?
Thanks for sharing the experience. Any comment on that? All right.
Well, no, I think
go ahead.
you're answering your question a little bit in asking your question. I think it is going to be AI of some sort that is going to learn how to detect that, and we're thinking about that in our own world as we solicit grants and applications, and we want to make sure that are they using AI to write their grants and using all of that, and so we're trying to figure out ourselves how to detect that and learn that, but it's going to come from us using AI at the same time. And it's just going to take time to figure that out.
But see, then it becomes AI policing us.
Yeah.
And that's the first step towards, just see it already. See it already.
I think we're going to get one more in the middle. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name is John Malin. I'm a member of the HAL 9000 steering group. I've got a specific question, probably for Roman. It's on satellites. It's something that he hinted at earlier. We have several trillion transactions and communications occurring every minute on a relatively small number of satellites. How do we protect the existing constellation of satellites against malevolent enemy interference?
Against?
Malevolent enemy interference.
Any minute, yeah.
Enemy interference.
Do you want to answer? Any-
AI.
I mean, that one, yes, I agree with that, AI.
Well, thank you to our three honorees tonight for their participation. Congratulations on the award. Nettie, Ramal, Michael, thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Walter Roseman.
Yeah, thank you all, including Bill. I had originally thought I was going to try to summarize this. I have changed my mind. I might go on ChatGPT and see what it turns up. I think that what does come to mind, and we heard a very negative view from Arthur Clarke. Thank you, Bill. I also see myself as an optimist, but I've lived in the DC area for about 50 years, and I have formed a thin veneer of cynicism around that optimism, but not enough to do away with the optimism. Arthur Clarke also said, and he said many things, many of them much more optimistic, but he also said that he warned us that those of us who were enamored with screens, that data was not information. And information was not vision. So we've been talking here, you all have been talking here, about how to turn the bit of information we now have into a positive vision. Not easy to do, but obviously folks like yourselves are thinking about it. I really want to thank the questions from our younger people, which proves a point of the Clarke Foundation, and that is you may be the ones who have the insights much sooner about what the issues were and how we go about turning them to our advantage and away from our disadvantage. May I ask you all just to stand up so we can give you a proper applause for everything you've done.
Thank you.